What's poppin', everybody? Cerebral54. Today we're going to look at Haymaker, an iconic deck, and actually the first competitive Pokemon deck ever. Now, when I did the best deck strategies for Pokemon decks that have been consistent and successful over the years, I completely forgot to talk about a few things, and one of them was Haymaker. I really planned beforehand to mention Haymaker as an excellent example for aggressive, disruptive decks, because it is the definition of a fast, aggressive, disruptive deck that attacks with one energy, does fast damage, and doesn't really do any funky stuff with abilities and tricks like that. And I forgot about that. I forgot about other few things like mentioning Rayquaza for energy acceleration decks. It's too bad. But as a result of that, I'm gonna honor Haymaker now and actually make a complete video for it. And we're gonna look at this deck in depth and talk about it. So it's kind of gonna be like a deck profile for an old deck. We're gonna do things a little bit different. So first of all, I'm going to show you guys a little list here so you can get an idea, and we're going to move from it afterwards and show card by card. This is Jason Klaczynski's list for the base set / jungle format, only 2 sets, and as you guys can see, there are only 3 Pokemon, 10 basics, 4 Electabuzz, 3 Hitmonchan, and 3 Cypher. That's all you really need. The classic Haymaker trio, the Haymaker Pokemon. These are basically the Pokemon. It was Electabuzz and Hitmonchan, and with Jungle, Scyther was added to the mix. A very big trainer skeleton with 34 cards and 16 energies of those 2 double colorless energy. We're going to talk about that later. Alright, let's talk about the Pokemon first. So the first guy is going to be Hitmonchan. You look at this Pokemon, it doesn't seem that special, but it was quite special for back then. With 70 HP and can do jab. Back in those days, in the very, very early days of Pokemon, the beginning of Pokemon, there wasn't really any fancy attacks, I guess, especially for few energies. There were a bunch of coin flip attacks that maybe did damage if you got very lucky with heads. A bunch of very big, costly energies that didn't do so much, and there wasn't really very many reliable ways to accelerate energy. And because of the nature of all the trainers, the best strategy people thought is just use a simple Pokemon and attack. Most Pokemon did 1 for 10 or 1 for 10, and maybe you flip a coin and get an effect like paralysis or confusion, things of this nature. Or you flip a bunch of coins to do any damage, and maybe you had the potential to do 20 or 30 for 1, like some Pokemon, I think the Duo, and I believe maybe Sandshrew? No. Anyway. So Hitmonchan being able to do 20 for 1 was very special. There was only a couple of Pokemon that did that. There was Machop and there was Staryu, I believe. I think Staryu did 1 for 22. But those Pokemon like Machop, even though it was a fighting Pokemon, since it had an evolution line, it could still evolve into Machoke and Machamp, it had less HP. Hitmonchan basically was the highest HP Pokemon, basic Pokemon, that could do 1 for 20. And actually, if you ever build up 4 energies, Special Punch wasn't half bad for a basic Pokemon. So this was your main dude. Now in Jason Klaczynski's list, he only runs 3, and that's possibly fine because Electabuzz is the best possibly general attacker once you get 2 energies. You do 30, even 40 for 2 if you get heads. So I think it's a good little balance running 3 of these, 3 Scyther, and then maxing out the Electabuzz. So the first Pokemon here, Hitmonchan, definitely sort of iconic Pokemon from Haymaker. Alright, next up is Electabuzz, another similar concept. It was a basic Pokemon that had 70 HP and could use Thundershock, do 10 for 1 lightning energy, and then you flip a coin. If heads, paralysis. Now these sorts of coin effects were much more important back in the day as well, because like I've said, there really wasn't a lot of fancy stuff, a big card pool in general. So any sort of effect like that you could get, it was going to help you. Naturally, there was ways around it, but every little helped. So you did 10 for 1 and always had the little useful effect of paralysis. And then with the second energy, Thunder Punch, Electabuzz was always going to do 30 damage, and then you flip the coin. If heads, you did actually 40 for 2, which was as good as it was going to get back then, especially for a basic Pokemon. This was the strongest attacker, you could say, for 2 energy. And if you got Tails, you did 10 to yourself. Now that's bad, but doing 30 was still quite good. 30 for 2. It was fast and it was strong. So very simple Pokemon too, 70 HP. Has double retreat cost. I think Hitmonchan actually has 1. Let's check again to be sure. And no, it also has 2. Okay, so the retreat cost isn't the best, but you weren't really going to retreat anyway. With all the disruption back then, your opponents using energy removals and energy removal too, you really had to use items to switch. You couldn't afford to just waste energies to switch like that if you had to. So Electabuzz, pretty simple. And then to round up the trio and then talk about something important is Scyther, Pokemon that got introduced to Jungle. This Pokemon made a great counter to Hitmonchan since it has a big fighting resistance to, well, fighting, minus 30. It means that Hitmonchan would have to use 2 plus powers to just do 10 damage. So Scyther checked Hitmonchan completely. It was a perfect check. It was a Pokemon that had Fear Retreat, the original Pokemon that has Fear Retreat, I believe. A classic Pokemon like that, iconic Pokemon too. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of Scyther, you know, you can't deny the card's iconic status like that. And its attacks were pretty solid too. Sword Stance, if you did that, next turn you would do 60 instead of 30 when you use Slash. But most people didn't really use this running Grass Energy, as you guys see with the energies from this deck. You would just use Slash. Attach any of either Fighting or Lightning Energy and then attach a DC. You know, it was a 2 energy attachment. You were using DC, of course, but you were going to do 30, so it was like a solid Electabuzz attack, you could say. So not bad, not bad. Jason Klaczynski seems to run 3 of these, and only running 2 DC. One thing that I gotta mention is these 3 Pokemon, back in those days, there were no Darkness Pokemon, there were no Metal Pokemon introduced yet, no Fairy Pokemon certainly. It was just basically, you know, the 6 types, or I guess 7 with colorless, or I think it's actually 6. We had Water, Grass, Lightning, Fire, Psychic, Fighting, and yeah, colorless, which doesn't even have an energy type. So seven energy types and 6 basic energy cards, basically. So take advantage of hitting for weakness was a more significant thing that you really had to take advantage of. There weren't really a lot of weakness variations, maybe a few on the water Pokemon. If they weren't weak to grass, they were weak to lightning. But for the most part, with these 3 Pokemon, you covered a lot of ground. You know, Scyther was grass, Electabuzz lightning, and Hitmonchan fighting. You hit a lot of key things for weakness, so it was significant. In the future, there was other Pokemon that you can basically put in this deck and maybe take another one, like maybe Magmar, Mewtwo, other big basic Pokemon like that, and they're basically Haymaker variations, and you can try all sorts of combinations, and the attackers you want to focus on, the type advantages you want to cover and take advantage of. For example, Magmar is fire, so you would hit Scyther for weakness, would hit Venusaur deck for weaknesses, and things of that nature. So these are the Pokemon, just 10 basic Pokemons for a solid number to start with, so that you weren't in danger of, you know, maybe having only one Pokemon and then getting knocked out and losing instantly, because the rules were different back then. You could attack first turn. So that's it. So now we gotta look at the trainer cards, starting with Bill, as Jason Klaczynski has the first card on this list. This is a very straightforward and simple card that he ran 4 of. You just draw 2 cards. So it's like a pot of greed for Yu-Gi-Oh! Only difference is there's no limitation. There weren't any supporters back then. You could use this as many times as you want in a turn, and any trainer for that matter. So this was basically draw 2 cards. Pretty simple. You dig through your deck quickly and see your power cards, your trainer power cards, and your plus powers, and everything basically you needed. This deck is all about aggression, all about control, kind of like Lux Chomp. You do a lot of damage for 1 energy. You have ways to pull key Pokemon from your opponent, hit what you want, and ways to recycle all your broken cards, basically. Disrupt them with energy removals. We'll get to them. But Bill, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Next up is Plus Power. Very important card. This was basically your damage adder. There weren't really any more. The KO assisters, as Jason Klaczynski calls them in his articles. It was this and basically Gust of Wind. Plus power, it says you attach it to your active Pokemon. Yeah, it was like that back then. And basically you use plus power, you're going to do 10 more damage. And you could actually play a couple of these. You could play like 2 of them, 3 of them in a turn. Maxing this out is important. Just playing one of these is important. Let's say you use this once and then you attack with Hitmonchan. You do 30 instead of 20. So against a 60 HP Pokemon, next turn if you use plus power again, you basically, it's a 2-hit KO as opposed to 3-hit KO. So you want to play these cards right. You don't want to, let's say, play this and then attack 2 more times to get that KO on a 60 HP Pokemon. Resource management is very important in those days as well, which is why these formats, it has a sort of beauty on it, a beauty for it, as Jason Klaczynski says. Simple, simplistic, the card pool, and it really is all about skill, like how the old, very old Yu-Gi-Oh formats were. Okay, so plus power. Next up, we're going to talk about, where are you? Energy removal. So this is the energy removal, one of the most broken cards of all time. Nowadays, you guys know it as Crushing Hammer or Energy Removal 2 as it was later remade, where you flip a coin and if heads you get the effect. It's still freaking broken if you ask me, but as it was like this, it's even worse. This card basically played a big role in what cards were going to be good. So people that wanted to play Pokemon that used more energies, attack with more energies, had a hard time because by the time you started to power up your dudes, energy removal was removing your energies. So that was pretty rough, and energy removal too is even worse. I mean, in the Wizards days, I believe, or yeah, it's in the Wizards days, but I don't remember if it's after Neo Genesis or during the first era. There was a stadium sort of card, a trainer that stays there. It's basically a stadium that was basically an energy removal counter that only functioned as blocking energy removals, that sort of thing. So it goes to show you how strong and impactful this card was that they had to create a specific counter for it. So just discard energy attached to your opponent's Pokemon. You kept disrupting them like that, slowing them down, removing their energies. If they were playing Haymaker themselves, they could, not easily, I guess, but they could instantly get another energy in play and keep attacking, keep the pressure on as well. But if they missed that, of course they had a turn where they didn't attack, and that's rough. So this is the power of energy removal. And any other deck that wanted to run more energies, more energy heavy Pokemon, maybe like Wigglytuff, it was eventually released in Jungle as well. They needed 3 energy to attack. It was even more rough with this card. It can discard DCs, of course, too. So nothing much else to say. It was your main disruption card. 4 of these, along with energy removal 2, which we're going to cover. It basically was all you needed. You didn't need any other fancy stuff. Just mass energy removal is the way to go, basically. I'd imagine if decks like Luckchomp could do the same shit, had access to a card like this, they wouldn't do any other funky stuff either. They would just max this out, possibly. Alright, now we got super energy removal. Where are you? So this card in a way is even worse than energy removal too, I should say. You need to discard an energy card attached to one of your own Pokemon to use this trainer. But then you can choose an opponent's Pokemon and discard up to 2 energy cards attached to it. This is even more mass energy removal. Now granted, you lose an energy too, but it's another way to just easily remove energy cards. Do this on an Electabuzz when it has 2 energies, do this on a big Pokemon where they're starting to get ready. It's really rough, and even though you lose energy yourself, Jason Klaczynski has ways to basically mitigate that. We're going to see pretty soon how he plays the deck, and that's really all to say. Everything else I said about energy removal applies to this card too. It's just seven ways, 7 cards to remove your opponent's energies, and this card removes 2. You could easily have your opponent not have energies for the entirety of the game, deprive them of energies for all the game if you did shit right. Strong as fuck. Next up is going to be Professor Oak. So another iconic card. He only runs 3 of these as well, as opposed to the 4 bill. And this might seem weird since this is such an amazing card and you can play multiples unlike Juniper and Sycamore. You really had to be careful. You didn't really have to discard so much and you wanted to see so many cards. Your cards were pretty simple. they had a 1-for-1 sort of use that was powerful, like energy removal plus power, your energies that you attached. You didn't really want to dig so much. It's not like you were looking for rare candies and evolution pieces and, a lot of energies to attach, like let's say when I play Raybor. So that's why he's only running 3, and also mentions how you got to be careful with this card, because yeah, resource management, like I said, is possibly the most important thing. He says even like having knowledge of prizes, like your opponent like maybe having more prizes shouldn't worry you as much as if you know exactly what they have left in the deck, what exactly it's in the discard pile. All the resources they have left is even more important than the prize lead, and the same goes for you. So you didn't really want to overuse this and just dig so much and discard everything, because it's rough, man, losing all your resources and then having few ways to get them back. Just one card can be the difference of you winning the game in a format like that. So Professor Oak, of course, it gives the deck a lot of speed. Haymaker, it's a speedy, aggressive deck, plays part into it being so aggressive and quick, along with Bill. Since you can play this as many times along with Bill, the deck was pretty fast, pretty consistent. It's just the trainer engine is really the heart and soul of the deck, basically, and of the wizard decks for as long as these cards were around. This is why I give so much credit to base set and put it, well, I'm gonna give you a spoiler, at number 2 in my best sets of all time. I'm really stand by that because it's just such a significant trainer line in that set. Anyway, I digress. Okay, now after Professor Oak, we have Gust of Wind, another freaking broken trainer. He runs 3 of these, so it might seem weird again not running 4, but you don't want it to clock. You don't want it to get stuck there and then you can't use it and then maybe you gotta discard it. 3 is a good enough number. He has ways to recycle trainers, and you want to play this right. You don't just want to play Gust of Wind to play Gust of Wind. You want to play it at the right time to basically assist for a KO, as he mentions. Get a significant KO, get a significant attack. Do something significant, get something stuck in the active position. Play the card right, basically. And Gust of Wind, if you guys don't know, I'm sure you do. It's basically Pokemon Catcher, Lysander, Guzma, a one-sided Guzma, without any cost. You can do this as many times. Obviously, you probably weren't going to do this multiple times. Choose one of your opponent's bench Pokemon, switch it with his or her active Pokemon. Broken as fuck, and another one of the reason why stage decks they really couldn't do it. Even a deck like Blastoise, which was Rain Dance in the first set, you could imagine it would be very powerful, a strategy like that, without much competition. And because of the speed of these trainers, Gust of Wind, even the energy removals and the speed of the Haymaker Pokemon, ensured that a deck like that wasn't going to be the top dog. In general, just trying to rely on stage 2 Pokemon and, stage 1 Pokemon, it was difficult. It wasn't impossible, because Jason Klaczynski mentions in his articles, how you do this, how you can actually do it and play the format as it's intended to be played. It definitely was difficult, and definitely Haymaker was the strongest deck in that era. I suppose Lickitung Stall, he says, is the best deck in the jungle base set format, but then they figured out how to counter that deck too. Haymaker, in the end of the day, that deck is kind of like Haymaker anyway. To me, it's Haymaker in my eyes. Anyway, I digress. But Gust of Wind, KO Assister, you grab the shit, KO, Lux Chomp style basically. It goes back to the stuff I said about deck strategies that are successful, the aggressive sort of deck. You attack quick, you pull whatever you want, you basically KO your opponent before they even know what's happening. So that's the point of this card. Very, very strong. Now, Energy Retrieval. So this is his sort of secret card that people weren't running back then, and he realized for testing that this card is very necessary and very good. So the original Energy Retrieval came in base set as well. Goes to show you, amazing set. Trade one of the other cards in your hand for up to 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile. So it's basically the energy removal we know, energy retrieval we know, and love, hopefully. I love it. Discard a card and grab 2 basic energies. So this was your way, and he's running 3 of these cards. This was your way to sort of get back basic energies after your opponent used energy removal 2 a bunch of times. Naturally, it was all mind games. You had to time this card right, make sure you didn't waste it, make sure maybe you tricked your opponent. They made a mistake. If they just made a mistake of thinking you don't have any more, or you use all of them, or what have you. It could be the difference of you winning the game, basically getting them in a position where they can't do shit, or just you losing the game, running out of energies. Very, very significant to counter energy removal and energy removal 2. Even your own energy removal 2, as you need to discard an energy to play energy removal 2. So yeah, just really skill intensive cards that basically counter each other. You gotta play them right, conserve them right. These sorts of things that I can understand why he says he really ducks that format, and he loves it more. Even more than the base set through fossil format, he says. I mean, I like fossil very much, so I can't speak on that. After energy retrieval is item finder. Iconic cards left and right. Item finder is the dowsing machine A spec, if you guys know that from playing expanded. Junk arm, if we go a little more back in time in the hard gold, soul silver, black and white days. And it's a very strong card, of course. It's like your sort of computer search with limitations from the discard pile. You discard 2 over your other cards in hand to put a trainer card from your discard pile into your hand. So I believe he's running 3 of these. Yes, 3 item finder. So once again, now maxing it out, it's not really necessary. This is like a recovery card. You're going to play this in a specific situation. It's the only card you basically can't really recover, since it's basically your trainer recovery card. So this card is basically your jack of all trades. Discard any 2 cards to become another card that you might need. Another energy removal 2, energy removal, energy retrieval, maybe a bill. Hopefully you don't have to spend item finder just to draw cards, but maybe sometimes it's the necessary move to give you the advantage. It's your Joker from the discard pile, basically becomes anything but Pokemon and energies. Definitely an excellent card. Once again, ties into the skill intensity of every card, does something for something, counters something, and the mind games, time everything right, play everything right. This could get you an energy removal too. Like I've said, it could get you an additional gust of wind if you needed a 4th one, 5th one, or even 6th one. So it's like the mentality of people playing N and then playing Via Seeker. Maybe they don't play many Ns because they know they've got Via Seekers to use the card. It goes into that. That's basically it. I can't think of anything else to say with this card. Let's look at the lists to see. Yeah, maybe you were going to use last, maybe the one switch. You had so many options, plus power, additional plus powers. Every freaking trainer in this deck is super strong. You're always going to have something great to recycle. So it's a no-brainer of this card being in the deck. Afterwards, we have the Scoop Up. Original Scoop Up as well. Where are you? So this is just Scoop Up, not Super Scoop Up. This is another the original concept of a card. You don't flip a coin, you just get the broken effect automatically. Choose one of your own Pokemon and return its basic Pokemon to the hand. You discard the rest. So I guess you could say it's like an AZ, but not in a supporter form. And it's basically what this does. This ensured that you could remove, let's say, a Hitmonchan if your opponent had a Scyther active. So, you could start attacking with a different Pokemon. So it acted like that. Of course, it acted like a healing card, not as a switching card too. And was one of your ways, of course, to remove status, like if you were paralyzed. You used this so that you wouldn't lose a turn of attacking. All the variations that Scoop Up, you guys know. Healing, of course, very powerful. So once again, another card that you need to play it at the right time. Maybe it was going to be a key card to recycle with Item Finder. And he runs 3 of these, if I'm not mistaken. And no, just 2 Scoop Up. Okay, I think I said that in the beginning. Okay, that's interesting. Once again, you don't really want it to be dead. He also has Switch too. So that's something. I mean, it's kind of weird actually. If you have Switch, I'm trying to think if there's any benefit of having Switch when Scoop Up is this powerful in the form of a trainer. Since you can play the Pokemon down anyway. That's interesting, but I guess I'm not an expert. However, Scoop Up is of course great, and he could recycle it if he needed to with the item finders. Right. Next up is the switch that I just mentioned. One switch. A switch is of course great, and in a format like that, it was maybe even better. Like I've said, there isn't variety. You don't have the option of running shit like Guzma, so that can function as your switch, you could say, and as a pulling card. So just an all-around great card. Switch. You never know when it's going to come in handy. This classic art with the trade and shit, the Kakuna and the Magnemite. Good stuff. could also recycle it. And that's all the trainers. Now the rest of the stuff is just 8 fighting energies and 6 lightning energies and 2 double colorless energies. So that's an interesting combination because when you think about it, he's running 4 Electabuzz and less Hitmonchan, 3 Hitmonchan. So that's quite interesting. And Electabuzz needs 2 energies to attack. Granted, the one can be colorless, but it's quite interesting. I'm not really an expert, like I've said. I can only imagine it means that Hitmonchan is more of your focus. You want to focus on it more, and you always want to have fighting energies around to make sure you can attack first turn and make sure you can attack with it as many times as you want. There's energy retrieval too, so 6 lightning energies isn't so bad. And the double colorless energies, of course, Electabuzz and Hitmonchan can use them too, but you definitely wanted them for Scyther, so he could attack for 2 energies, a DC and any other energy. And that's basically Haymaker. It's the perfect example of a aggressive, disruptive deck. You could see how Buzzle GX decks do the stuff this deck does, attacking quick with 1 energy, doing a lot of damage, trying to disrupt, like with Pokemon like Lycanroc. Even running things like Crushing Hammers. They don't do it now, but they sort of did in the beginning, I think. Or maybe I'm the only one that does this. It's that sort of strategy. Lux Chomp, the same thing. Attacking quick and cheap with easy to use Pokemon. You don't have to go through hoops to evolve and do stuff. Just attack quick, do as good as damage as you can. For 1 energy back then, it was 20. Disrupt with Gust of Wind, boost your energy with plus power, be really fast, just recycle anything you wanted. A toolbox kind of deck too with the item finders. It's just everything you need as a perfect example for an aggressive deck. It was really the iconic deck of the Wizards formats. It evolved as the formats went on. Later on, it was the broken, really ban-worthy Sneasel that was like a sort of Haymaker deck, but then it became a deck of its own with Markrow, and then it evolved into a whole different thing. The concept, the strategy is the same. The heart and soul of Haymaker is that you attack for cheap, and you have flexible options for speed, disruption, and more power, and recycling, of course. So that's basically Haymaker. So I hope you guys find this video insightful and you liked it. I'm not going to do these types of deck profiles all the time, but I felt necessary to do this because I really didn't want to skim over Haymaker like that when I talked about aggressive decks in my successful deck strategies video. Hey, what's good guys? So as I was editing the sound, I realized that I forgot to talk about computer search and last, which is pretty terrible. Basically, he's running, of course, 2 computer search and 2 last. Computer search doesn't really need any explanation. It's the computer search A spec. You guys know from the expander format, you discard 2 cards, grab any card from the deck to the hand. It just adds to the consistency, to the speed, to the toolbox aspect of you get whatever you need from the deck instead of the discard pile with item finder. If you need a plus power, you get a plus power. You need energy removal, get an energy removal. You need to just get a bunch of cards. Maybe you would grab Professor Oak. Pretty simple. Now the last is the more interesting card. He's running 2 of last, and this card is also very significant and plays a role in how the meta and the format was when it comes to these speedy decks like Haymaker and Evolution and Stage Pokemon not being really the shit. Is that last, you and your opponent show each other your hands, and then you shuffle all the trainer cards from the hands into your decks. So it's like you could say Gets his supporter that got banned, but both players have to put the shit back into the deck. So of course you're gonna play this when you have a low trainer hand size, or when you don't have any trainers at all, preferably, and you do this on an opponent, and they lose. Hopefully they don't have shit in hand, and just like it says, it makes the game sort of exciting as both players are top decking to see what they're gonna get. So this is like sort of your N option, you could say, since it shuffles your opponent's hand to the deck. You basically do hand disruption. It's your only disruptive hand card. Removes key cards from their hand. So later on, this had even better implications where there was Fuji and stuff, and you always worry. You make sure you do this before you attack, so that you put them in a situation where they can't use Scoop Up or Switch, or somehow just remove the damage, use Mount Fuji when it eventually got released in Fossil. Obviously, it has all sorts of implications when your opponent loses trainer cards, but I know that one of the combos was that you wanted to play this, of course, at the right time, and play it so that, okay, I use my plus powers, I use my stuff, I'm going to KO these Pokemon, or I set up some Pokemon to KO. I want to leave you without any cards to use, you know, your scoop ups, your item finders, everything that you could use to, you know, heal the damage and make my attacks relevant. I'm going to prevent you from doing that, or at least hope to do that. So that was the use of last. Obviously, hand disruption as strong as this is always good. And that's basically it, guys. Just gonna tell you guys again that I hope you enjoyed. Hope you guys subscribe, leave a like, share this with your friends. I hope you guys found this insightful. This has been Saber Wolf 94. What's up?